a murder. And what's worrying about this murder is that the only suspects are all police officers. Now, can that police officer get away with such a horrible crime? Or can the other officers, with the help of forensic science, bring that corrupt officer to justice? Let's talk about Deception, Murder in Hong Kong. Now, before I get into my review, I gotta say I am a huge fan of social deduction games, and Deception, Murder in Hong Kong does fall into that category. But I'm aware that these kind of games aren't for everybody because they don't like the confrontation. But the cool thing about Deception is that the game doesn't rely on that mechanic. It kind of just adds to the actual gameplay because there is always a logical puzzle here. You don't actually have to listen to anybody else, you can just go on your own instincts and go on evidence alone. And I think that's a really, really cool niche for a game, for this game. So that's something that can be really, really applauded in my eyes. This also applies to the murderer themselves, because if they're being accused heavily, they don't have to get really defensive and kind of argue their way out of it. They can just kind of calmly give other suggestions to this crime by using other people's cards. So, I mean, as long as you've got an idea of who you want to shift the blame onto, then you can just keep calm. You don't have to shout louder than them, you don't have to be argumentative or confrontational. And again, that's something that's great. I also love that every hidden role in this game is as interesting as the next. Being a detective is absolutely brilliant because you've got this crime to solve. Being the murderer is just so intense, and just, can you be clever enough to get out of this? Being the accomplice to try and help the murderer and shift the blame onto someone else by backing up their arguments is just really, really cool concept. And the witness is amazing. I mean, it kind of comes off that Avalon Merlin role where if the murderer knows who the witness is at the end of the game, they get killed. And I really like that concept. But most importantly, I think the forensic scientist is an absolutely brilliant mechanic. Just the fact that you cannot communicate at all other than using those tiles is brilliant. I mean, some of those tiles are really, really tenuous to the crime, and some of them are really key pieces of evidence. But you cannot tell your detectives which ones are which. And it just creates some really tense situations as you can hear your detectives kind of come on to who they think the murderer is, and they're so close, but you just can't tell them to go for it. It really is an amazing, amazing dynamic and really fun to play. Being the forensic scientist also really requires you to think outside the box. I mean, can you picture what happened here? How can I use my imagination to paint a picture of what happened so my detectives can, locate who this killer is? It's just, I love the fact that it's just not refined to the cards. You really have to think and kind of imagine that this actually happened, and it's brilliant. The game has excellent pacing. I mean, the game from start to finish only takes around 20 minutes, but I love that the rules state that each player has kind of a minute or two of their own to kind of give their thoughts and opinions uninterrupted. And it kind of gives those kind of more shy players a chance to express themselves, to get more involved. It's really cool, and I love that it's kind of very, very inclusive of each player. And also it's great how easily it is to adjust the difficulty for each team. I mean, if the murderer is winning too often, maybe you can take more clues and weapons away. If you find that the detectives are finding the murderer too often, then you can add more clue cards. And it's as simple as that to adjust the difficulty of the gameplay. Now, as with most games of this nature, they really kind of come alive at higher player counts, and Deception is kind of no exception in my eyes. The game states it's for 4 to 12 players, I believe, but I really wouldn't recommend playing with 4 players. I'd say at least 5. I think it really comes alive at 6+. You just don't get the same kind of variables and interaction or kind of, alternatives to who this murderer could be in those lower player counts. It just makes it it makes a such better game when there is more players. But the only kind of problem is that with those higher player counts, it's very difficult to absorb everybody's clue cards and everybody's weapon cards. I mean, if everybody's getting 4 or 5 cards each, that's a lot of information to take in. I mean, obviously you can look around the table, but I don't know, sometimes it can be difficult, especially for the murderer themselves, to absorb the information from someone sitting further away from them, because those cards are quite small and the foreign text on them is quite large. So that's just a small quibble. The game is also so dependent on that role of the forensic scientist. I mean, if they're not a very good, if they haven't got a very good poker face, then it can kind of break the game, in my opinion. I've had experiences where the forensic scientist has given visual clues away without meaning to. Maybe they just haven't got a good poker face, and it can really sway the detectives into finding who the murderer is, which is sometimes unfair in my eyes. I mean, it's very important to stress that the forensic scientist can't do anything apart from use those clue tiles. Otherwise it can ruin the game. So let's go into the conclusion, and I'll give my final thoughts on Deception Murder in Hong Kong. Well, first of all, I just absolutely love the general vibe and theme of this game. It's really, really tense, and it creates a really engaging experience, because that murderer really wants to get away with it, and you really want to find that murderer, because it can be very frustrating if people are pointing to you and you know you're innocent. It's just a really cool experience that I recommend everybody tries at least once. Personally, my favourite part of this game is the imagination aspect of it. I love painting those pictures of those murderers. What actually happened here? How can we use this evidence to find who has done this murder? And it's just really cool because you do have to think outside the box. And I mean, I think to be really good at it, you have to anyway, unless maybe the murderer's not chosen the best kind of clues. But if that murderer is good, you have to be very, very clever, especially if you're that forensic scientist. As stated in the video, this game really does come alive at 6 players, but I'd recommend to kind of not go above 8. I mean, that 6 to 8 players is really the sweet spot here. There's not too many cards for players to absorb, but there's enough kind of possibility of being several players who committed this crime, meaning that the forensic scientist has to be more kind of careful with the clues he's giving. Now, Deception actually must have to be one of the most played games that I own this year. I mean, I have no trouble at all getting this game to the table. Every person I've played with, and I've played this with a lot of different people from all different kind of gaming experiences, and they've all unanimously loved this game. And we've never just sat there and played one game, we'll always play 3 or 4 games back to back, everybody having a go of being the forensic scientist. So as you can probably tell, I'm very, very high on this game. I think it's absolutely brilliant, I think it's unique, and I must say it's probably in my top 5 at the moment. I'm really loving playing this game. I never ever could imagine turning a game down. It's fantastic. So again, maybe if you have players in your group who kind of don't like the confrontation of a social deduction game, but like the idea of it, then this game really is for you, and I can't stress enough for you to go pick this one up. It's really brilliant, it's a great kind of puzzle, it's a cool theme, it's a great mystery, a fantastic game, and one of my personal favourites at the moment. So stay tuned for the criteria breakdown of Deception Murder in Hong Kong, where I give my overall grade of this game. Thank you for watching. This has been Chairman of the Board. If you've enjoyed this video, please hit subscribe and like my video, and also check out my other videos on my channel. Thank you very much, and I will see you next time.